Hello, and welcome back to Rebel Reviews. Today I'm going to give you my review of The Blue Beetle. But before we get started, press that like button, hit subscribe, and make sure your notifications are on so you don't miss any and all new content. Let's go! But before the review, this is your regular scheduled spoiler warning. If you've not seen the film, go check it out. But if not, you've been warned. Alright, so let's start off with my general reactions of the film. So I saw this Saturday morning by myself. And no, not by myself like my family didn't come with me. Nobody came with me. There was nobody in the movie theater at all. And I thought that was kind of crazy because it's a Saturday morning. It was the first showing of the day. But I still figured there'd be people there, especially when school's about to start up. People would be going to the theater trying to get in as much as they can before the real world kind of hits them back with their kids. But again, I was the only one there. Now, there could be several reasons for this. I've talked about this in other reviews, that there could be the inflation issue. It could be oversaturation of films this summer because we've seen films like Mission Impossible, even Indiana Jones, although Indiana Jones might a top film for most people. I loved it. And I know Mission Impossible is getting great reviews, but they're not making a lot of money. And it just could be people spent all the money on Oppenheimer and Barbie. So who knows why people are not showing up. It could also be the DC mess. It's a little all over the place. This is kind of like the new DCU Blue Beetle. It's not a James Gunn film, but it's supposed to be like a new part of the new DCU. So I don't know. That could be it. We have the Snyderverse people still lashing out, although I don't think that's a huge crew of people. But obviously, not a lot of people came to this movie. It could also be that it is a character that people are not very familiar with. I myself, I know of Blue Beetle, but I do not know the ins and outs. I don't know the origin story. I'm kind of lost on it. And I kind of like that going in because it's usually not the case of especially a comic book story for me. So I didn't do any research on the character. I wanted to go in fresh and see what my thoughts were with that without kind of knowing anything or comparing it. So the experience was a little lonely. There were parts of the movies where I laughed, had fun, but it was kind of lonely not to do it with other people. So that's kind of a bummer, but overall, my experience with the movie, I thought it was really good. And I'll talk about in a second what I thought was great about it, of course. But someone who doesn't know much about the character like me, I enjoyed my experience with it. I thought it was a great film. It doesn't break any new ground per se for an origin film. It's kind of like the same old beats that we've had, especially like in early 2000 films or even late 2000s with like Iron Man and Hulk and Spider-Man. It's kind of the same beats. But let's go ahead and talk about what I liked about the film, even though I had a lonely experience. All right, so let's get started with 5 things from the movie that I want to talk about. Not all 5 things are things that I liked, but I'm going to talk about 5 main things of the movie. So the number one thing that I did like is the family aspect of the film. So a lot of superhero movies usually deal with a hero and maybe a close friend or a close family member like Spider-Man per se. It is kind of family, but it's Aunt May. It's kind of small. The same thing with like Iron Man. We got Pepper Potts in the MCU. We know of his father and family and stuff like that. But a lot of the characters don't have like a full family around them. I know Guardians of the Galaxy, you can call them a family put together. But this is very different. They do a really good job of using and again, like I said, I don't know much about this, so maybe this is how it is in the comics. But the main character, Blue Beetle, Jaime, is coming home, and he's greeted by his sister, his mother, his father, his uncle, and his grandmother. And they're throughout the whole film. Like, it's not just a part where they're just ins and out, like he comes home and sees him, whatever. They're a part of his journey as he becomes the Blue Beetle, which I really like that. Like, you don't usually get a lot of that representation of the family being involved in the journey of the superhero. They know who he is from the jump. They're on board. They're fighting with him throughout the movie. And I think it's just a really good job of just putting a family together. So I think it makes sense for family movies, for a whole family could come and watch this, and different members of your family, your grandmother could even be a part of it and enjoy the grandmother in the movie. Your sister, even though our main characters are heroes, male of course, but we got the sisters involved in helping out. So I think it's a really good job of using a family on the journey of becoming a superhero, where so many of the stories that we have so far is just the main character and the love interest, maybe one close family member or friend with their journey. And that's been used a lot. That's the common thing. So I like seeing that the family was involved throughout the whole film. So I think that's the biggest highlight for me that made it interesting. So number one for me, the best thing about the film was using a family along the journey of Blue Beetle. Number 2, obviously a big thing for this movie is Latin American representation. So I think that's a huge plus for this film. We don't have any characters whatsoever for the most part in the DC or MCU of Latin characters, and so this gives them a way to be upfront. And I think this goes back to the number one, the family aspect. I think that's the whole point of This representation is to show like how Latin families stay together. We find out at the start of the film that the family's struggling. They're going to lose their home. They're going to lose. They've already lost their business, and that they didn't want to tell Jaime because he was at school working. They didn't want to distract him and tell him anything. And then he even says when he finds out when he gets home that he would have left school and he would have came back home for the family to help out. And I think that's just very true to their families and just the culture that I know of the people, that they're very family oriented. All that matters is that their family is together. And that's a big part of the film, is that when they're going through this new journey of Jaime becoming the Blue Beetle and just not knowing his purpose in life. His father is the main member of the family who kind of leads, is the head of the household, and he talks about nothing matters because that happens to us because we always figure it out. And I think that was just a huge part of the film, using that representation, as well as not just showing the positives and how they stick together, but also some of the things that they may deal with. A big part of the movie, the villains per se, the Cord Industries have come through and kind of changed up the places where they live, pushing them out. They can't afford to live in the places that they used to. Also, just not being respected. For example, Jaime is his name, but if you looked at it and spoke English, you would probably say Jamie. And in the film, a few times he's called Jamie instead of Jaime. There's also another a doctor who Victoria Cord just keeps calling. It's kind of like a gag throughout the movie. Dr. Sanchez, but that's not his name. That's just the name that she says for him. So showing the representation and just some of the things and struggles that they may go through. The uncle, played by George Lopez, which will be one of my topics I'll be talking about soon. As much as the movie is fun, it does go down into some of the issues that they may have as someone living in an area where not fully represented or being taken care of, or just some struggles that they've had coming into America or whatever it may be. So like Rudy talks about how crossing the border was hard. It's a nice little sentimental moment, but crossing the border was hard. But he said what was harder was living the next 20 years. So that's just something to think about. It made me think just how everyone's life is different than others, and everyone's just trying to look for a better world to live in for themselves. And it's just, they added that in this film so uniquely that it works with the character, obviously. And then how Jaime's on his journey as Blue Beetle, looking for his purpose, not knowing what to do now that his family's struggling. He got this degree, and he's trying to get a job so they can help save the family. But it doesn't work out. It doesn't go as planned. But they stick together as a family like they would, as in most Latin American families, I guess, would do. And they figure it out together. I've listened to a couple reviews or just read a couple things about how it's very, because I don't have much experience with it myself because I'm not Latin American, but just how people felt that it represented how their family dynamic works. So I think that's a huge plus on the film, especially since something that we don't have so often, especially in superhero movies. So I think it's a big plus. The representation was awesome. So number 2 would be that. Number 3, George Lopez as Uncle Rudy steals the show. So I'm not like a huge George Lopez fan by any means, but he is like the absolute gem of the movie. He is hilarious, but also not just there for the comedic value. He actually has a purpose in the movie. He's very skilled. At one point when they're breaking into Cord Industries to get a key, he's the one who creates I forgot he's got a unique name for the contraption that he makes, but it's gonna like scramble the camera so they can get in. He's just like a sidekick. So like the family aspect of it, like everyone has their own moments to shine. They're not just some person at home making the meal or whatever to come back to and yell at the superhero when they don't know what's going on. Like they actually know what's going on and they're a part of it. But definitely George Lopez steals the show as Uncle Rudy. Not only is he funny, like I said, but I mentioned like he has the sentimental parts about the struggles that he's going through in life, how he feels like a failure, that he's living in his brother's living room. But he is a mentor to Jaime. Obviously, when Jaime gets home, we see that that's who he's looking for, and he's excited to see. But he's also like a conspiracy theorist as well, and he's kind of right throughout the film in different parts. But I definitely think George Lopez is perfect for this movie. He can actually act. Like I think people don't think maybe George Lopez can act, and maybe even myself, because I'm just not a huge fan. I know more about his comedic stuff, but he can play a serious role and also be comedic as well. So George Lopez, number 3 on this list, is something I absolutely love from the film. If you're a huge George Lopez fan, you're obviously going to love it already. But even if you're not, I can see you being a big fan afterward. Number 4. So this is a topic I want to talk about. It's going to be a mix of good and bad, and that is the villains. So our main villains of the film is Victoria Cord, who is the daughter, I can't remember, Mr. Cord, I'll say, who created the Cord Industries company. And then he had a son and a daughter, Victoria. And then the son was Ted. But we found out through the film that after Mr. Ted is gone, he leaves the company to Ted. And that obviously, they're mentioning that it's probably due to sexism, I guess, sexist, that they left the company to Ted and not Victoria. So she's been slighted, which I guess is supposed to be like our her motivation for why she does what she does now, how she's become our villain. I do think Susan Sarandon does a great job of playing that character. She did a really good job. She plays like she's a manipulator. She's tough, and then but when she knows she needs to be a different way, she can with Carapax. Overall, I think she does a good job. I think it would have been more development could have been used if we could have seen maybe some flashbacks of how she's been slighted in the past, just to build her up a little bit more. She's unlikable the whole movie, but I think there would have been like something you could have seen something to kind of make it a little more gray. Because I kind of like a villain who you can kind of sympathize with a little bit. Them just mentioning that maybe she didn't get the company because she's a female wasn't quite enough for me to do that. But overall, I think she was pretty good. You do find out that, again, I know nothing about this character, but her brother Ted was the Blue Beetle in the past. And he had the scarab but couldn't use it. So this is a part that I'm confused with. She's searching for the scarab at the start, and it's like in this big sphere thing, and she gets it so that she can create this army of soldiers, which is how Carapax is involved in it. So I was confused by that, like the journey from her to get to there, from how they lost the scarab. But then there was another guy who had the scarab, and he died, so that's how he lost it. So maybe I just didn't follow it that well. But that was the part that was a little weak for me to follow. But we find out, like I said, we found out that Ted was the Blue Beetle, but he was like Bruce Wayne with the tech. He couldn't use the scarab, so he created his own stuff to be the hero. And then it's almost like she wanted to just run a business, so she probably is upset, which is why she was doing the stuff. And she's kind of rude to his daughter, played Jenny, which is a cool parallel, I think. I don't know if this is the motivations for the character, because like I said, I haven't read this stuff, but Ted, who's not in the movie, seemed like he was like Batman, and Victoria could have been like the Bruce Wayne version of that. Like, so Bruce Wayne obviously is Batman, but she was more focused on the business. And if there was a story where Bruce Wayne didn't want to be Batman, I could see him being the more business guy, kind of like Tony Stark a little bit, but obviously not dark, where she stays with the weapons and she's trying to make money off of it. Whereas obviously Tony Stark finds his way and doesn't want to build weapons of destruction anymore. So there's a lot of parallels I see with Tony Stark with not only the villains, but like the hero, Blue Beetle. Again, I'm gonna talk more about that in the next one. But overall, Susan Sarandon does a good job of playing Victoria. I just could have used some more development. So like her henchmen, though, the difference here is like most of our villains is the ones who suit up. So Susan Sarandon does not suit up. She's created this, I forgot, OPAC, I think it might be called, this suit that men can wear, or anybody can wear, I guess. And Carapax is one of the person he's like the prototype for it. And I think he does a really good job in the movie as like the evil guy. He's got the look, obviously. He's been pieced together with robotic stuff or whatever, but they need the scarab to like build the suit better, to add more to it and to make more of them. And we get a little backstory with him through a flashback at the end of the film that makes you sympathize with him a little more, and that's what I prefer. I guess that's what I kind of want with the Susan Sarandon character, to kind of sympathize with her a little bit, like a little gray area, because she's so unlikable the whole time. I like to see like their motivation, something that you could kind of agree with maybe. But for him, they definitely do that. You can see that he's in this place because he's been manipulated the whole time, and it comes full circle by the end. So the villains overall pretty good. I guess for like an origin film, it works. It's nothing huge, like main level scale. I'm glad there's no blue beam in the sky. We're trying to save the world from aliens, or whatever. A little more small scale. But overall, Susan Sarandon does a great job of playing Victoria Cord. I can't remember the actor for Carapax, but he has the look. He's great. Just a little more development for Susan Sarandon would have been great. To see some more of her motivations of why she does what she does. But yeah, that's my thought on the villains. Overall, pretty good. It worked. Yeah, Carapax is great. Susan Sarandon's great. Just a little more development for her. All right, the fifth and final thing I'm going to talk about is the Blue Beetle. So first, let's start off this with the actual Blue Beetle Scarab. So I had some issues with it. At the start of the movie, we find out Jenny Cord shows up because Carapax believes he's found in some big giant sphere. They break it open to get it. It obviously has a power that they want that I think can create, I think it's called again the OPAC suits that they're making so they can sell to the government or the army or whatever to make some money off of. So that's what she wants, and that's what she has it. And then from that point forward, Jenny Cord finds out that she's making these weapons that she doesn't agree with. So she goes and she finds a scarab, she takes it, and she gives it to Jaime, basically to escape. And then that's how he gets it from her. And then obviously he becomes Blue Beetle after that. But the issues I have with the scarab is and again, maybe I just didn't follow correctly. I don't know how it got to the sphere to begin with. We find out that it's alien. George Lopez makes a funny joke. So like, I don't like that word, which is funny. But we find out it's not of Earth. It's from somewhere else. But I don't know how it got in the sphere because we find out because in the process while Jaime's trying to get rid of it because he doesn't know what to do with it, he only loses it if he dies. And there was a guy who had it, and again, this is where me not having any prior knowledge probably messes with me. So if you're like me and you go in, you don't know, maybe you have these same issues as me. He had it, and then he lost it because I guess he died. But then Ted had it at some point, but Ted couldn't open its power, so he became the Blue Beetle by he was motivated by it, I guess, to just wanted to use it for his image, I guess, and he couldn't use it, so I don't know how at one point he lost and it got to the sphere. Maybe I missed something. I don't know. It's possible I did. I didn't fall asleep during it, but I did. I wasn't sure how the scarab got to where Jenny Cord was getting it. So maybe that's something I got to check back into or find out. So that's the story of the scarab. Now, once Jaime gets it, at his house, his family kind of pushes him into opening the box that he was told not to open. He opens it. The Blue Beetle chooses him. So it chooses people. I guess that's why it didn't work for Ted. It didn't choose him for whatever reason. Even though it would seem he was an admirable man because he wanted to be that Blue Beetle. Who knows? But it chooses him, and then it goes inside his body, connects to him. It's kind of like, they call it a symbiote, so it's definitely like Venom. But it has tech, so once it connects to him, he can talk to it. Like, he can only hear it, but it reminds me of like Jarvis with Iron Man, so it's kind of the same there. It's like a mixture of a symbiote, nanotech type thing going on. That's what made me think of. I liked it. It works. His transformation's cool. He's, obviously it's an origin story, so he's figuring out as the movie goes how to use it. We find out that the longer he wears it, I guess it's becoming one with him, kind of like that symbiotic thing. His abilities are, again, unique. They remind me of Venom and Iron Man even still. He can make swords and blades, but he can also make, lethal rounds, which he chooses not to for the most part of the movie. So he uses blasters, kind of like Iron Man. So very similar. I'm not knocking it for that. It's just what it makes me think of. Very like the Iron Man, Venom type abilities, but very cool. The blue's obviously cool. They like the yellow eyes. The fight sequences are pretty good with it. When he's still figuring out, everyone's seen this part in the trailer where he cuts a bus in half. So he's got some huge power with it. He doesn't have superpowers himself. It's all the suit. So it's not like it's Peter Parker who, if he takes the suit off, he's still got some abilities. If he's not in the suit, he ain't doing the stuff he's doing. So it's all the suit. So I enjoyed it. Again, like not knowing anything, it was something cool to see on the big screen. The different abilities, I just thought of a lot of comparisons to other characters. Overall, it works. Along with the Blue Beetle, for himself, I guess this is probably stuff that was created. It was created by Ted. So again, because he was motivated by what it was or whatever, the history of it, I guess. He created his own tech. So there's a part of the film where Jaime's sister, I can't remember her name, she gets looks like a Nintendo Power Glove, and so she's got some power. And then there's like a whole lot of weapons. They have the grandma pulls out like this gauntlet, like she's just blasting people. Rudy drives or flies his little, I don't know what you call it, pod. It reminds me of something from Night Owl from Watchmen. So he's got like a plane. So not only does the Blue Beetle give Jaime powers, but Ted already has this layer of things that he was motivated by with the Blue Beetle, I guess. So they call him like the knockoff Batman. So there's a lot of cool, interesting stuff in the film. But again, and they even do in the movie, they compare it to other characters as well. So it's just very similar, motivated by characters before. And I guess like that shouldn't be a knock. That should kind of be like, Blue Beetle, not a very mainstream character, but if it were true, it is a character that seems like it kind of could have been motivated by like a Batman or Superman or whoever characters in that universe before them. So overall, I liked it. A lot of similarities to other characters, but it was still good to see on the big screen. So very well pleased with it. I would just like my main knock is the whole. This is something that could come up further down the road is the scarab itself. And again, it's just because I don't know anything, so I want to know more. Maybe I should just look that up, but I kind of want to see it come alive on the big screen if possible. If I don't get that, then I guess I'll dive into it. But yeah, Blue Beetle overall pretty good character. That was my number 5. Okay, so those are my 5 topics I want to talk about the film. This is like a little bonus area. Kind of what I want going forward, what I like hope to see. So in number 5, I talked about the scarab. I would like to know more about the scarab. Obviously, there are 2 post-credit scenes. The one main one is that we find out in the film that we think Ted Kord is dead, but we find out in the middle credit scene that he is alive and he's out there. So obviously, a sequel I think would be built around that and where he went. Again, I don't know much about the character, so I have no idea where he went or how he went, if Victoria was behind it or not. But yeah, I'd like to see a sequel and see what James Gunn does with this going forward if he puts it into his universe. I liked it. I think they did a good job of. They mentioned characters, but like for the people who are just dying over the Snyderverse stuff, you don't see them, so it could be any character that's recasted. They don't mention any events. So it will fit seamlessly in anything that James Gunn does going forward. I would like for all the characters to return. They were great. George Lopez again seals the day. I would love to see him again in this role. So I'm hoping that there'll be a sequel. Even if there's not a sequel, that the characters show up in another form, possibly in another venture that they do in film. It's a bummer it's not making a lot of money. I think that's the thing. Like if they're going to stick to we got to make money, then this is something that could get shelved, which would be a disappointment because I think it's a really good movie. And it was refreshing to watch. There was no main issues watching it with all the DC stuff that's all a mix and you're wondering what's happening. Like this thing is actually can fit into the new universe or whatever they do. So I'm hoping that happens. Yeah, I want more Scarab stuff because I'm interested in that piece. And then obviously a sequel to see what this Ted dude is doing. And just more fun with this family because it's more than just the hero. It's the family of the film. So that's what I like to see going forward. All right, so let's go ahead and give it our double R review. So I like the film. It's not anything groundbreaking, nothing new. It's kind of the same old origin beats. But again, with all the things I talked about, minor issues with some more. I wish there was some more villain development. I wanted more stuff on the Scarab. But overall, it's a fantastic movie. I'm going to go with 8 double R's. Give it 8. Yeah, good film. If you're watching this and you didn't see it, which is possible because not a lot of people have seen it, go see it and check it out. I did say spoilers, and I did talk about a little bit of stuff, but I still think you would enjoy it even after this. If you hadn't seen it, if you did see it, let me know what you thought about it. Comment below what you think. Where do you want to see the DC go with this? If you want to see them do anything with this going forward or not. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was a great film. I hope to see more. I hope we will, depending on how this box office stuff goes. So yeah, so if you liked it, thanks. Leave a comment below. Press that like button. Click subscribe. Share this with your family and friends. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss anything else. And Rebel out.